Hey everyone, welcome to Flyleaf Talks About Stuff, where we get to talk about things that we want to talk about. So I am Stephanie, and up top is the fantastic Kim Lubbert, and down below is the beautiful, fantastic Allie Martin. Hi.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
We are missing Kimberly this week, but she is due to be back next week with us, which will be exciting.
Yes, it will.
Yay.
Yay, Kimberly.
Yeah. 4 beautiful brains.
In one place. For the price.
In one place.
So today we're going to talk about
EMDR.
EMDR.
Go.
That just felt good.
Yeah, it does feel good.
So good. So what does EMDR stand for?
Eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing.
Yes. We'd rather say EMDR.
Right. And actually, interestingly enough, Francine Shapiro said if she had the chance, before she passed away last year, I believe, she said that if she had the ability to go back and call it something else, she would have.
Yeah. You can't really change it now. It's kind of cat's out of the bag, right?
Yeah.
Right. Just something about reprocessing, because we can get that bilateral stimulation in lots of different ways.
True.
That's very true.
As Kim alluded to in a video last week or the week before, where you were talking about the neurology of walking and how that's activating both hemispheres of the brain at the same time. Mm-hmm. And you were doing that, and I was thinking, how many different ways do we do it? I was like, when we think, if we're passing a ball, that just looked weird, but if we're passing a ball back and forth between the hands as we're talking and processing it out, juggling? I have a slinky in here. Like you got it in my office because people that are highly anxious like to do stuff when they're talking to help fizzle out that anxiety. Yeah. But I was thinking even like a slinky, it's the bilateral happening.
Yeah. Or you see people shifting their weight back and forth or pacing. Those kinds of things are all that EMDR kind of movement, that bilateral movement.
Yeah.
Right. For my little ones that I've done EMDR with, we'll write something on the dry erase board I have in my office really big, and then take our finger with a tissue on it and just go back and forth to erase the whole thing. Or we drum left, right with our arms, or we stomp like we're soldiers. We sword fight left, right. Anything that gets the body moving is great, but anything that sneaks in some bilateral is even better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have mine use that bilateral music in the evenings, and so you put on your headphones, put on bilateral music, and just breathe into your body, and your body, it's like crack, or the opposite of crack, because you calm down. Your body just like you just kind of go and you just calm down, and it's a really nice feeling to be able to relax at the end of the day or in transitions when you need to reset.
Right. It's helpful to note with that bilateral music though, you really need to pipe it into the ears. You can't put it on ambiently in the room or in your car. It's going to sound weird.
It is very weird.
Although I have to tell you, I have clients that don't like to have things in their ears, and they will play it from their phone on with a black screen, and it puts them to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the music itself is very soothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the music's great. They make these like really, this is a side note. I saw it advertised on Facebook or somewhere on the internet. They make like on Wish maybe, but they make these like sport looking headbands that are really soft that have audio built into it that don't go in the ears. I think it just sits on top of the ears. So people who like to sleep listening to stuff, they make this headband. I was thinking about you, Kim, because you like to sleep with noise in your ears.
I do. It makes me not hear everybody around me too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it keeps everything else quiet. Well, and what else is EMDR is REM sleep, right? Mm-hmm. That's actually the classic, exactly what the version is that we try to, that Francine Shapiro is replicating is the eye movement part. And so I always tell everybody, if you have a hard problem and you wake up in the morning, and for me, always it's drying my hair. I think my hair's magic and it has all the answers to the universe in it, or my hair dryer is magic and has all the answers in it, because when I'm drying my hair, all of the things that I was thinking about and worried about come clear to me. And it really is the REM sleep that does that to us.
Mm. And REM stands for rapid eye movement, that part of sleep. And I don't think people realize that their eyes are moving when they sleep. So I always ask, like, you ever held a sleeping baby? Like someone that's not creepy that you hold and stare at while they're sleeping, because they do it too.
Holding creepy people.
If you want to hold creepy people, that's okay.
Well, it wouldn't be creepy if you held an infant while they slept in your arms, but maybe like your spouse, you don't watch them sleep and catch REM sleep because you're probably sleeping as well. That's what I meant.
It's like, just notice if your pet is asleep and they start to do the twitches and their eyes are going back and forth.
Or pet, that works good too.
Well, I have clients that when we use the tappers, because we have the tappers in the office that just will kind of buzz back and forth in your hands. And I have clients that say that they find themselves moving their eyes back and forth too while their hands are buzzing. It's like this involuntary movement that occurs when they're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty interesting too.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of things is EMDR good for?
Everything, in my opinion.
Just trauma?
I mean,
Not
just trauma?
Not just trauma, no.
No.
You can do it for general
No.
stuckness in life. I mean, you can do it for depression, disordered eating. I used it one time. They have a protocol for motivation and what is it called when you don't have a lot of, well, I guess it would just be motivation to get stuff done.
Drive? Motivation?
Yeah.
Get up and go?
They have different protocols for everything. And so I think what it started off as in its purest form was helping people with big and little traumas, but it has just blown across the world with people using it for all.
Sports performance?
Mm-hmm.
Any enhancement of pretty much anything. So, if you want to be better at public speaking or those kinds of things, more confident, anything like that, EMDR will help with.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It doesn't necessarily need to have a negative cognition tied to it. That
Right.
I'm not good enough. I should have done more. It doesn't necessarily need to have one. But
Right.
One of the specific protocols in my giant, how many? Two binders that are maybe 5 inches full of protocols. They have infertility protocols. So like even medical related things, there's protocols for that too. Somatic body pain stuff.
Migraine relief.
Migraine, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of amazing stuff that EMDR can do.
Yeah. Obsessive compulsive. They have one for unrequited love. Like having trouble just really getting over that lost love, which I thought was interesting.
That is a good one.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that.
I was talking about this with somebody today, and when I talk about it too, you think about I don't have my brain in my hands today. But when you think about the hemispheres, one is your creative and your colorful side, and one is your logic and black and white and clarity side. And if you have two people trying to solve a problem, to have a creative and a very logical person sitting together trying to solve a problem or work something out, they would come up with these out-of-the-box beautiful solutions. And so what you're doing with EMDR is creating a conversation between those two sides of your brain and having them join to work together more efficiently than if you weren't using that kind of a technique. So like putting the headphones in while you're studying will take you deeper into your studying. It's kind of neat.
That's cool. I've never tried that, because we read and we study continuously as part of our profession. So I'll have to experiment with that and put on some bilateral music and see what comes out of that.
Yeah, and if you use it just as background, not as like noise blocking music, but just subtle background music, it really does help. And it will also, you have to, for me at least, if I'm looking and exploring into the music, because there's a ton of them out there.
Right.
I don't like the ones that have beeps on them. So if they have a ding or a beep that goes back and forth while music plays, to me, that's kind of annoying. I like the ones where the whole track is moving. And so it's not nauseating, but it's very soothing. And so if somebody out there is looking for that, then my recommendation is if it's got beeps and dings in it, I probably wouldn't use it. I wouldn't recommend it.
Right. My favorite bilateral track is the, it sounds like a maraca. And it's like, I love that one. That's like my favorite.
I love that.
It's a good one.
Nature sounds, and I like some classical.
Yeah. And there's some really good guided imagery too.
Mm-hmm.
So, so EMDR can be used for a ton of stuff.
Right. What would a client expect coming into the first EMDR session? How can we maybe like demystify what that looks like?
Oh. Well, coming into the first session, like ready to process?
Or first session in the office?
Maybe a little bit of both, because I think, at Flyleaf we do a pretty good job at like talking to people over the phone, letting them know who we are, what to expect regarding paperwork and stuff like that. So maybe just like your first session ready to process, since this is an EMDR video.
Yeah.
So I always talk about that, that it's in phases. And so just because it's in 8 phases doesn't mean that it needs to take 8 times, that we can tend to get through 1, maybe even 3 sessions in one time, depending on what our bodies and our brain have collected, right? So I tend to let people know that first session, we're probably going to get through phase 1 and 2, meaning we're going to look at what it is that we say to ourselves. What are the first and worst times that we remember saying these things to ourselves? Are there any additional memories? What are the present day triggers? And how do I want to live moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I usually call that like the setup conversation. So we're talking about getting a good history, talking about what it is you want to target, attaching to other things in your life, and kind of figuring out, like Stephanie said, what are those things. And then when you come in ready to process and you sit down, sometimes we can do both of those in one session, right? And start processing. But when you sit down to process, I think, is that what you're asking, Allie? Like, what would that feel like, that actual thing?
I think just to, I think people have started hearing about EMDR. It's a commonly Googled thing these days. Everybody kind of knows a little bit of something about it, that it works. But when you say eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, it might be like, oh, whoa, what is that? Yeah. So just to demystify that, it sounds like, and I agree that the first session is going to be a little bit of history taking, maybe a little bit of education on past, present, future, templating, and, getting that negative cognition down, and all of those things that we do as part of the phases and stages of EMDR. Just kind of that it's not electrodes hooked up to your head, and it's not cuckoo crazy scary science 1950s black and white granny movie thing,
Right.
No, and I usually will say, when we actually start processing, think about what the thing is that we're going to process, and run through it like a movie, and stop on the scene, or if you can think of what is the most disturbing or unsettling part of that whole event for you, and we start there, and then it's kind of, how do you feel about yourself when you see that event? And then moving into, what would you rather see? What would you rather believe, even if you don't believe it? And then how strongly do you believe it? And as they're activated and getting more activated, where are you feeling it in your body, and what emotions are coming up for you? And then just going, this is the whole hardest part of it is turning on the little machine, or starting the eye movements and saying, let your brain go.
Right.
And that's the hardest part, because people don't know how to let their brain go.
Right. And I always tell people, give yourself permission to get out of your own way. And so sometimes, rare is it, I think, that somebody's able to just get in and start processing on the first time. I said it's not uncommon, and it's more common than not, I should say, that it takes several times for clients to just be able to trust the process.
Right. Right. And like your brain will see something, I always call it the Jedi mind trick. So your brain sees you'll like, if somebody says, hey, look, there's a blue cup, and all of a sudden you go, oh my God, I forgot to take the trash out. Well, how did you go from this blue cup on my desk to thinking about what's going on at your house? And there's probably 8 steps in between the 2 things. But if you go back and look at it, it makes logical sense. And your brain starts to do that and make these weird connections with things you didn't think were connected. And all of that is okay, because it's just your brain accessing all of that information, and it is making sense of it, and it will make sense. But it's allowing for that and not trying to stay focused on one thing. Even though we start with one thing, we don't stay on that the whole time.
And interesting, I have a story about that. I was working with a gentleman, and it was like his brain was processing like he was looking through a peephole. So he would be like, each round would be like red wagon, blue tile, white picket fence, whatever it was. And at the end of the session, I just kept marking little notes of everything that he said. At the end of the session, I read it back to him. He goes, oh my God, that's my grandmother's house. So how we process is how we process. Sometimes sometimes it's metaphoric. It doesn't have to be a literal memory. Sometimes we process in colors. Sometimes we process in body sensations. There's no supposed to's in any of it. It's whatever happens, and we are just observing what happens.
Right.
And interestingly enough, our consultant, Stephanie, had said that when there tends to be a lot of color, that's usually like childhood memories coming up, which I thought was fascinating.
That is fascinating.
And our memory is only as good as the last time we remembered something. So the original memory is stored somewhere back in our subcortex, and we don't always access it or have access to it. But if you've ever had a memory that that was 20 years old, and you talked with somebody who was there at the same place at the same time, they'll look at you and go, I don't remember it like that. And you'll go, but I remember it like that. And our memories can be faulty. And so what EMDR does sometimes, which is actually really cool, is if there's some part of that event that's very disturbing or makes no sense, is it will give you a path back to the original memory so that you can make sense of it and give you some details maybe you forgot. So it's not like it's not like digging for old things or wondering if something ever happened and I'm trying to find it, but it brings you the whole picture, which is really nice, and it can be comforting when you've got those big pieces missing.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. And in that same vein, because we do a body scan and we ask how someone's body's feeling, we're giving permission for the brain and the body to connect. And maybe that could be a key to unlock pieces that we weren't aware of, memory pieces that we weren't aware of previously.
Right. And one of the things I love so much about EMDR is the phase 3 with resource building. I mean, having people create calm, safe places to utilize. And I say that resource building is not just for if you get activated during EMDR. This is just resource building for life in general. I mean, who doesn't want to learn how to deep breathe effectively and have some mindfulness and grounding skills to navigate in life, in addition to visualization and guided imagery?
I agree. And grounding is so important throughout this process.
Right.
And if we can learn to ground here while we're in the midst of something really terrible and working through something terrible, then one of the things it does is it builds confidence in being able to do it at home and just our everyday lives. So there's a lot of the things that folks learn here it isn't just processing the one thing, but there are skills that they take with them and continue to build on, and it's building resilience in the future too, which is really good.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Because processing happens during EMDR and then it happens outside of EMDR. And there's like just neuroplastic changes that happens. I mean, we can see on an fMRI scan what trauma looks like in the brain before trauma processing and what it looks like after. And I mean, it's different. For those of you who haven't Googled it, Ariana Grande posted her brain scan imagery after the Manchester bombing when she was at her concert. I mean, she had trauma from that. Not traumatic brain injury trauma, but like trauma in the way that we're talking about it now, that they couldn't see it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Love that.
Me too. Go Ariana Grande.
Go healing.
Go healing.
Exactly. Well, and our brain and our body knows what to do. We do it every day.
Right.
How many times that we get stuck that we end up needing to be here, but we experience hard things all the time, and our brain and our body communicate and how they ever communicate, and they work through it, and we move on. And the vast majority of things we just work through and go on. They're not a big deal. It's just little things that's, well, sometimes not little, but it's those small percentage, I guess, of things that we get stuck on.
And it all was discovered by Francine Shapiro walking down that wooded pathway.
It's pretty awesome.
Started with a theory and is now what? International organization, evidence-based protocol to use for trauma treatment, used for everything.
Vetted by the
Yay.
Yeah.
It is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Final thoughts on EMDR? Aside from that, I think that we do it all the time here and we love it.
And I think it's for everybody. I think that sometimes even if you're not traumatized, if you're just feeling, just struggling, it'll help. It's not, I think at one time it was kind of this daunting, scary protocol for trauma, and it still is a protocol for trauma, but it is just a trauma that feels so much better.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
my takeaway is that, I don't work with children so much these days, but you can use it with children too. Yeah. I've seen videos of it being done with little ones where like you just put some bilateral stimulation with the little buzzies under their lap and you tell them a story of what happened to them. and just be that grounding, calm, safe place for them while their brains do what their brains know they need to do. That's trusting their little innate body brain wisdom.
Right.
So.
And to add on to that, the younger you are, the less baggage you have to sort through, the quicker the healing is. The older we are, the more life experience we have, the more stuff to sift through. So kids heal really fast.
They do. They do. Yeah.
Resilient little buggers.
I know. They
But
bounce.
it's a gift if your child is experiencing something, it's a gift to let them heal at age 5 and not wait until age 55 and have experienced, whatever kind of things happen due to those thoughts and those feelings they've been having.
Well said. EMDR, Flyleaf Counseling. How do we find us?
I thought we were going to clap again.
You were so excited about that, Stephanie. You're just like,
EMDR.
oh, here we are.
Yeah.
It's like, well, EMDR, Flyleaf Counseling. Where do you find us?
Well, you can find us on Facebook by searching for Flyleaf Counseling. You can find us on Instagram. We rose that from the dead again by searching Flyleaf_counseling. And we're also on YouTube by searching for Flyleaf Counseling in the search bar.
Cool.
Oh, go to our website, www.flyleafcounseling.com.
You got it.
All right. See y'all.
Bye.
Bye.